Welcome, everybody, to With Thunder's Applause, a podcast where two friends get together to discuss the events and ideas that will shape our uncertain future. I am your host, Steve, along with my co-host, Zach. What is up?
Hello, everyone. Nothing much. I went and got a haircut. I think she gave me the Karen. Let's see. Yeah.
The Karen. Very nice.
I was
now you
just
have to
like,
go scream at your neighbor and key his car for fucking being too loud.
I do. Call the police, get him shot.
I don't know, dude. There's this guy I've seen pop up in like TikTok and shit before. Motherfucker's got like 2 million subscribers, and all he does, and that's what I meant. I was talking to you offline about video quality and how like we're actually not super low budget. I mean, this guy's recording in his living room. You can just see like things going on behind him.
Yeah.
But he's got like 2 million subs, and all he does is these videos where he like collects various social media videos
Doesn't
and
matter
then
how
reacts to them.
doesn't matter how high profile your production is if nobody wants to watch your stuff.
Yeah, precisely. And I know several people like that. Hard Lens Media. There's another guy named Frank Analysis is a channel, and I like his stuff. Generally speaking, his production value is fantastic. But yeah, he's like stalled at a few thousand viewers or whatever.
Yeah.
Our subscribers rather. Anyway, what's on the agenda tonight? It's a Shooting the Poodoo episode
20, if I'm counting it correctly. Represents like 40 weeks. Or no, like a little over 30 weeks, because I think we're doing it every other week to begin with. But yeah. We're gonna cover the two new characters that I have found in Ahsoka, which are the two characters with orange lightsabers. I didn't notice that during the trailer, but everyone's been pointing it out like crazy that they are orange, not red. Get your shit straight. Oh, in fact, I should change the background.
Yeah,
orange.
It's going to be fascinating. I mentioned last week that I was going to try and binge the last of Bad Batch season 2 and get it out of the way. And we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
The kids were getting picked up, and I looked at the time, and I was like, if we start by this time, we might be able to do it. And then we started later than that. And so
you can always watch it without them.
We didn't want to. Well, true. I already got this most important spoilers anyway, because you can't scroll your fucking feed without seeing the spoilers, or you're watching an unrelated video and then someone in the comments is like, oh, when this happened on this show. And you're like,
this is why you don't read comments. Nobody reads comments. Who the hell are you?
That's mostly what I do.
Oh my God, that's scary.
I put the video on and then I scroll the comments.
Holy shit. Oh man. No, I only do that when I'm like, did he really say that?
It's like having
you really said that? Okay.
I don't know. It's like having I mean, you're able to express your opinion, even though it's not conducive to a debate, and neither is like live chat. They're just simply not.
Oh, live chat is so bad. At least in regular comments, you can reply to someone, and they can reply. And like someone can reply to their reply, so it gets nested.
But if you don't get like emails when people respond to you, when are you and then go back to it? When are you ever going to go back to a video?
You just have to
check your comments.
It tells you all the time.
Oh, I have YouTube notifications turned off.
Oh, okay. I do not. So I get told whenever there's new videos and shit like that.
It would basically be all day.
Oh, okay.
I subscribe.
I'm only
hundreds of channels. Yeah.
I curate my subscription. I think I only have like 80 or something like that. And I drop people who don't post for a long time.
I still do too. And sometimes I'm like, how you must have done something cool. And I saw some things you did cool and sub to you. And I'm looking at you now and like not impressed with the quality of the conversation. And so I unsub. Or like even people I really like. There was this guy, I forget his gardening channel, but he's here in the East Bay. I think he's in like Concord or something. And he has had a big channel on YouTube for a long time, and then he just like 5-6 years into his YouTube channel, he started like talking about fucking God in every single fucking video he did.
Oh yeah.
And that's how I was like, bro, like you have such good content, but like I'm not gonna listen to 5 minutes of that. every time I want to watch one, because I was watching all of it, not just the stuff that I was interested in, but I was like,
right.
Oh, what are you doing today? Kind of thing.
Yeah, oftentimes I'll go back to the beginning and binge if it's not like more than a decade worth of shit.
And I've unsubbed to some really popular channels when it's just like you engage with the audience and you engage with them through like super chats and shit. And it's just like, will not incorporate new ideas, just want to say the same thing over and over in different ways. Vote blue no matter who, you're getting screwed by Democrats. Like, I don't need to hear that over and over.
Yeah.
Because you're not helping anybody grow their understanding of how the world works. You're just still expressing a fucking grievance that's goddamn like almost a decade old at this point. Right? Well, no, we're about 7 years removed, I think. Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
So anyway,
on top of that, we're also going to cover some protests in France, because of course there are protests in France, and
just threw a video for some riot porn. Yep.
Yeah. We got to get that in every once in a while. And then we're going to cover a short from, I believe it's the Young Turks watch list, and some WMUR TV about what's his name, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yes, I thought that was Young Turks also, because it says TYT.
Yeah,
I'm not sure it is.
Oh, well, if it's not,
the people talking about it I've never seen before, and I've seen other things from the watch list, and I don't subscribe to the Young Turks, but it does not feel to me like their content unless they're making like a side brand or they're doing something that I'm unaware of.
A lot of times they will do that. It just says watch. No, it doesn't really say that they're associated with that, so, or why it's TYT even.
Maybe the Young Turks should be alerted to it, because I'm sure TYT is a trademark or something.
Yeah, or at least substantially associated with them to the point where it's the first thing I thought.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, it better be fucking trademarked.
It says tyt.com.
Oh no, that's the Young Turks.
Okay, yeah. So it's just an offshoot show. It's
oh no shit, really?
It might just be shorts. Let me see. This isn't even our stuff.
Okay, maybe.
Oh no, they got live and shit like that. Huh.
Maybe not, because I'd be really surprised if. Maybe not. I don't know. It seems pretty disturbing to me. Anyway, I look forward to discussing that with you, and then I think we're going to finish up with some RFK Jr. talking about.
Yes, we are
talking about things.
So let's get started on the Ahsoka with a wild theory about where these two orange lightsaber wielding Force users might be from.
All right,
because I love wild
a minute
theories.
And a half or so.
Yes, and here is our new layout, so I don't have to move ourselves around. It looks very serviceable. Function, not form over here. Oh man, I'm so bad at graphic design.
Possibly cluing us in on just what sort of time period he is from, and if they are both truly from a different time.
Oh, dang it. I forgot to rewind. I wasn't kind. I didn't rewind.
And why they might have that orange-red lightsaber which Inquisitors don't have. Another theory that might clue us in on their possible backstory, and this one is probably one of the wildest theories out there, is that they might have something to do with the World Between Worlds. And if you're unfamiliar with this name, the World Between Worlds is a mystical plane within the Force, which serves as a pathways and doors to many different points of time and space. It was first introduced in Rebels, and it was how Ezra managed to save Ahsoka from Vader despite it being the pass. Although the only known door to it was destroyed by Ezra, you can be sure that there will be other ways to access it. So the wacky theory that might possibly be true is that both Baylan and Shin aren't from the present, but possibly from the past. Possibly Darkside users or even Sith from a time long forgotten, such as the Old Republic. This would explain why there's something about their character design that makes them feel so old, especially when you look at Baylan's lightsaber hilt and his armor. And the actor that plays Baylan has even come out to say that there is something Arthurian and legendary about his character.
I love it.
That is cool. I did not hear that.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, in this next video that I have just out, says like, no, that's not it. They said so in a later interview. So yeah, I mean, I wish that'd be, kind of cool. I think someone else, or maybe it's later in that video, they're talking about how it would be unwise of Star Wars to go down the like time travel multiverse thing because it's everywhere and we're all oversaturated.
Yeah, and I think that there was a somewhat large contingent, although it was not universally held among the people who hate the sequels. They're like, maybe they'll use the world between worlds and basically erase the sequels, and it's like, Disney's not gonna fucking do that.
One of the other videos I watched was like, oh yeah, it's basically like Anakin Skywalker when he's older, and in the alternate universe that he came from, like Luke was born a girl. And I'm like, oh no, no.
Yeah, no.
God,
yeah,
no, that's not it.
It would just complicate things, and also I think it's a fucking MacGuffin.
I mean, yeah, you're only showing them very briefly, and we know for a fact that what's the name of the actor who died recently?
Oh, Ray Stevenson.
Yeah. So he's not going to be there for season 2. Yes, that is.
Yeah, he's the actor that plays the guy he was talking about.
Yeah, so he's going for season 2.
But it is interesting for them. I heard, and I guess you said it was confirmed in an interview, that he's like a Order 66 survivor or something.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Which is fair, because like I always wondered, like, I mean, they could effectively kill any Jedi attached to military units, and they could probably track down a lot more, but there has to be some that got away.
One of the
there were thousands of them.
Right, but there would have been a register. One of the other videos I was watching that I didn't use, I was saying like, it was from like 2 or 3 months ago. And they're like, oh, I sure hope it's not another one of those damn, Order 66 survivors. They're popping up everywhere. It's really starting to look like, Palpatine wasn't very good at what he was doing.
Oh, no, extremely effective. He destroyed the Order.
I mean, yeah. And all you have is a bunch of, rebel teenagers who destroy his multi-quintillion credit. That's okay. Yeah. So anyway, he fucked up.
Luke was the OG Mary Sid. He blew up the Death Star having like had a 12-hour conversation with fucking Ben Kenobi.
Pretty much. Like, use the Force, Luke. Shit, sure, why not?
Sure, why not? I'll just do this thing and manipulate the trajectory of my missiles or whatever.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna womp rat that shit up.
Right? That's the implication. Not that he just sensed the right moment, but he manipulated.
It did look like they just took a right angle.
They changed direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, pretty cool. Go Force. Yeah. So,
I think I just connected Baylan Skoll, the mysterious Dark Jedi debuting in the new Ahsoka series, to the post-Order 66 era based off of a scene from Rebels that easily gets written off. This is going to be a wild theory. Strap yourselves in. First off, rest in peace to the great Ray Stevenson. He's going to be sorely missed by fans of a lot of different genres. Little is known of his character Baylan and his apprentice Shin Hati, but we've been given essential clues as to where they may have come from. Thanks to some information by
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why someone's like, oh, a lot of fans are hoping that it's, like an alternate blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, he really does have that, Darth Vader, minimalistic defense thing going on. But a lot of the Jedi do. Anyone who's... because they're all trained in similar light forms, and so anybody who took Gochi, I believe it was the defensive one, would have known those moves. So
yeah.
Empire Magazine, we know that the pair are indeed Order 66 survivors. However, their treacherous footprint in the galaxy has already been hinted at in an off-the-cuff statement in Rebels Season 2, Episode 3, The Lost Commanders. In this episode, Ahsoka sends Kanan and the Ghost Crew to the Silo system to find an old friend in order to help the Phoenix Squadron establish a new base in the Outer Rim. Very quickly, we learn that it's none other than Captain Rex. And more to our surprise, he's not alone. He lives with 2 fan-favorite clones, Gregor and Wolf. Upon discovering that Ahsoka's friend is a clone, Kanan ignites his lightsaber and Wolf replies, "Jedi, they've come for revenge." At the time, we're thinking that Wolf is referring to Order 66 and the Jedi Purge, but Rex says something that has had me confused for years. The one line in Rebels that I think that we've all let slip past us. Rex says, "But they weren't the ones that betrayed us. Remember, Wolf, remember." As much as this is communication between 2 characters, this is Dave Filoni telling Star Wars fans to remember this moment. It's an intentional line that isn't wasted, and after all these years, we're finally able to connect this to the dot. I think that Baylan and his apprentice at the time joined up with Rex and perhaps even the Bad Batch and somehow betrayed them.
Yeah. So yeah, there was apparently a release that said, no, he's an Order 66 survivor. And she's so incredibly young that she probably wasn't even like Padawan age at the time.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think the actor is 26 or something along those lines.
Oh, really?
25, yeah.
She's like Russian, right? Or
Ukrainian American, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I thought as soon as he said that line about rebels, like that being important and somehow indicating something that would come like a decade later, I'm like, no.
Yeah, I doubt it. Yeah.
No, that meant exactly what everybody thought it meant. Was like reminding him that the Empire was the one that fucked all of that over, and that
not the Jedi. Yeah,
exactly.
Correct. Yeah. So it's shaping up to be something, and we got another. What is it? 2 months? I think it's in August.
It's July, bro. In like 3 days.
Oh yeah. Oh, I was like, yeah.
And it's August 20 something. So what is that? 5, 6, 7,
probably 8 weeks.
Less than 8 weeks. Maybe 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So what are we gonna do now? France protests?
Hell yeah, man.
Little clip from I think Reuters.
Oh yeah. They're pretty big.
Play the whole thing.
The whole thing. Okay.
Unrest erupted again on Thursday in France, marking the third day of clashes over the deadly police shooting of a teenager. In Nanterre, where the incident took place, cars were set on fire, and protesters set up road barricades, hurling projectiles at lines of police. Riot police fired back with tear gas.
I like how they're like warning graphic content. And all it is like them exchanging tear gas canisters. Like
Maybe some people identify as cars, and they were just like, no, my car people. I don't know.
No, have you seen the cartoons? Funny because you call that graphic content, but that's so common.
Yeah, I mean,
anywhere large numbers of pissed off people gather, the cops are fucking throwing gas grenades and shit.
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't seen anybody getting hit with a stick yet. So it's just funny they preface it with graphic content warning.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their own threshold, so maybe.
Touche.
Yeah.
In the day, there had been a largely peaceful march for the victim, identified as 17-year-old Nael of North African descent. He was shot dead during a traffic stop, and public anger over the incident led to riots across France this week. The teenager's mother chanted "Justice for Nael" with other supporters in the march. Karima Katem, a local counselor in Blanc-Mesnel, northeast of Paris, says people's patience is running thin.
I think we owe this today to Nael. There have already been so many like him before, and we don't want any more. By killing Nael, they killed our child.
Earlier, President Emmanuel Macron held a crisis meeting with senior ministers over the shooting and condemned the unrest. Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin said 40,000 police officers would be deployed across the country on Thursday. That's nearly 4 times the numbers mobilized the previous day. A video shared on social media, verified by Reuters, shows 2 police officers beside a Mercedes AMG car, with one shooting at the teenage driver at close range as he pulled away. He died shortly afterwards from his wounds. A Nanterre prosecutor said the officer involved had been put under formal investigation for voluntary homicide. The officer has acknowledged firing a lethal shot, the prosecutors added, telling investigators he wanted to prevent a car chase after the teenager allegedly committed several traffic violations. The incident has fed long-standing complaints of police violence and systemic racism inside law enforcement agencies from rights groups and within the low-income, racially mixed suburbs across the country. Authorities deny the accusations.
Wow. Imagine that.
Oh, wait, we don't have to.
Police like using use of force against minorities, right? Like, and what I thought was interesting is that like it just shows the fundamental difference between the United States and most sensible nations.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have these problems, but like the president is straight up like, all right, I'm calling like an emergency meeting.
Right.
And maybe like his response is how to keep fucking security or whatever, not like how do we fix this, but like, and I don't know if that's because of our system of government, like the federalism and how the states are largely responsible for those kinds of things. So the federal government doesn't see a need to like step up and do anything about it. But you're looking to see if Biden had some task force.
I
know Pelosi kneeled in kente cloth.
Okay.
No, they did.
Good for her. What's that?
What's that?
What's kente cloth?
Oh, like I don't know, like a West African ceremonial clothing.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, white members of Congress, old rich white people, put on fucking African clothes and then took a knee.
Okay,
that was their and Juneteenth, right?
I hope that
Nike Juneteenth there's a holiday too. I missed what you said, bro.
I said I hope Nike canceled their sponsorships
to Nancy Pelosi.
It's a Colin Kaepernick joke.
All right. Now
what I was interested in is sorry, it said that he was put under investigation, some special kind of investigation, but I have to wonder if, like in the United States, that's like, oh yeah, you're on leave with pay.
I think it is administrative leave.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he'll be removed from duty.
Yeah, and I mean that's all well and good, and I suppose it would be pretty, destructive if you just every time you accused someone of something, you stopped paying them, and they had to, like, I don't know, go to jail and maybe lose their house or anything. Oh wait, that's what we do here for everyone who isn't a cop. Oh fuck, man, it's almost like they have a really good union.
And it's interesting too. The cop's like, well, no, I needed to shoot him because like he had committed several traffic stops. And I wanted to avoid a chase.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure the death penalty is not the consequence for a fucking traffic violation.
Exactly. Just like it's not the consequence for throwing bottles at people in the subway.
What's that?
So just like it's not the consequence for throwing bottles at people on the subway. Not a death
sentence. Stop it with that, dude. The cop has a monopoly on violence.
That's
it's
true.
A different kind of responsibility. It's like telling the teacher they can't fuck their students.
Right. They should have a monopoly on fucking their students.
Basic training NCOs can't fuck their cadets.
Yeah. Probably a good call.
It's the way it's supposed to be. Because you exercise a high level of power and responsibility over some civilian who's probably exhausted at the end of the day and applied an amount of force that caused death later, didn't like kneel on the neck and kill the person.
Yeah.
And also like of a person who's lived so rough and tumble, their fucking resilience to something like that is next to none.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, now we got this one.
So
I didn't get a one. Yeah, I didn't get a one.
Oh, perfect. We're gonna watch it together. But check this out. So I included this, and we had what we were gonna do, and then I saw this, and I was like, no, we gotta talk about this because like
put you over here. No,
what I'll do too is have you leave the window up when it's done, and have you click on the comments.
Okay. I see
comments. And we'll see if your algorithm places top comments in the same place. I think it's based on upvotes. I'm not sure. But if you do most popular, I think it should be sorted by upvotes or whatever, or it might be comments below it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they do it, but anyway, like I was just scrolling through TikTok on YouTube, which is what I call YouTube Shorts. TikTok is just like
TikTok. Oh, that's good. TikTok.
It's just short form video. That's what a TikTok is. Anywhere it is, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. At any rate, I saw this when I was scrolling through my feed, and it shocked me so fucking much that I was like, we should talk about it. So this deserves a graphic content warning. Not like the most graphic thing on that was like the cop shooting at the car, which you couldn't even tell except for that little pop you heard.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And this
that was the most graphic. And for us as Americans, like gunshots, you're like, there was a fucking drive-by like 3 blocks from my house. Like
I hear it all the time over here.
Gunshots aren't a big deal.
Yeah. You just sorry. It. It's okay.
So let's graphic content, trigger warning, violence against individuals.
etc., etc.
Let's watch. So here, this dude freaking the fuck out, throwing rocks.
Can't be throwing rocks, man.
Oh, watch out!
Missing.
Throws rock and misses. Throws rock and misses. Breaks the glass. This guy.
Oh my god! What?
He's still under it.
Yeah.
The golf cart popped up on top of him, and he's still pinned under the golf cart.
Holy shit!
Wait.
Back away! Huh?
Yeah, help him.
God, talk about the consequences of your own actions.
Lift it up.
The way the man in the golf cart handled the golf cart and the situation with such a professionalism, as though he had done this before.
Pause.
That is
First
weird.
of all, that is absolutely disgusting to me.
Yeah, their reaction. Yeah.
Now, the comments. Is there a top comment that has 11,000?
Let me see. 11,000?
Yeah,
we got
I think it's the
16,000.
Look at the top comment.
It's only 519. Let me see. Yeah, it's already arranged by top comments, but this one's got 16,000 here.
What's that one say?
It says, I hope golf cart driver does not get any charges. A rock guy had it coming.
That's it.
Okay.
That's the one.
Yep.
So since I watched it this morning, has another 5,000 upvotes.
Yeah.
16,000 people see that someone who's, it depends on the state, for whatever reason, the state of California's threshold for felony vandalism is $400. Like, that needs to be like pinned to CPI or something.
Yeah.
Because $400 could be like breaking a fucking fancy light fixture.
It could be like, I throw my Wiimote at your TV.
It precisely,
felony.
or
Yeah.
or you crack a window or something, right? Like you punch or kick a commercial window and crack it. A big commercial plate window is more than 400 fucking bucks.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and it's hard to say, oh, you're a felon, you can't vote or have firearms because you caused $500 worth of, that's fucking absurd to me. However, the fact that 16,000 people as of right now have said the guy throwing rocks deserved to potentially be killed. Because yes, it's a golf cart, it's not going that fast. The way your body twists, you could potentially break your fucking neck. And as you saw on that video,
paralyzed
him, drags him all the way from the building out towards the sidewalk and comes up. So the whole weight of it is rolling over this guy. And then when he stops, he's pinned under the guy. Like the guy's pinned under the golf cart.
And that guy didn't look like a spring chicken either. So, I mean, like, he's not going to bounce back from it.
Clearly he was having a fucking episode, right?
Yeah.
And these commenters are like, oh, well, you know, he's just he just had this air of professionalism as he committed like attempted murder is what that is. And then 16,000 people said he shouldn't get charged with anything, even though we just witnessed fucking attempted murder. Go ahead. Sorry, buddy.
Downvote. There's one. You don't get to see him anymore, so you don't know. That's the shit part of this new system they have, is you don't get to see the balance. You don't get to see if like 100,000 people were like, wow, you're a monster. You just see the positive aspect of it.
Do you know part of the reason that happened?
No, it's been too long. I don't remember.
Mainstream media was getting fucking ratioed on almost everything they said.
Oh, that's great. But
so they removed it.
In terms of
would just fucking show their discontent with the lies of the corporate media, and they would use it to downvote. So YouTube's like, we'll get rid of those. So the creator can see that people are downvoting your shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually, I'll freely admit, I reported this video and that comment for inciting violence, and or fucking graphic content.
So two things.
That guy literally, that he attempted to murder him with a vehicle, and they're fucking cheering it. This is the country we live in.
Yeah,
this is not kumbaya. You know, And as much as I want to believe in the country coming together around like a common goal, like solving climate change, like this is the fucking country we live in.
Yeah, I mean, that is vehicular manslaughter right there.
And I pray to Christ this gets back. This is so popular that it finds its way back to that community, and they use this footage to lock up that guy and potentially press charges as fucking accomplices for the people who were fucking egging it on. Not the people commenting, but the other people in the video that were chasing
Physically?
that guy.
Oh, it looked like they were trying to get him to stop. It looked like they were like, dude, don't do that. I mean, like if you listen with the headset, like you can hear them like, hey man, don't do that, or don't do that, or come over here. But two things. So one, an excellent case of dark humor that tickles me just the right way. At Supast33T says the guy throwing rocks is a hero. He stopped the golf cart from going into the water with his own body. Most people would have gotten out of the way. It's fucking dark. It gets me right there.
Well, we don't know what the fuck happened.
No, of course we don't.
Like, that could have been a dude had a fight with his wife, and she fucking locked his ass out.
Yeah.
And he was like, bitch, don't fucking lock me out of my house. And then he threw a fucking brick through the window, and then someone tries to murder him. Like, we don't know. Maybe the guy was just fucking having a psychotic break or whatever else, but like, does not excuse attempted murder or attempted vehicular manslaughter or whatever you want to call it.
This one of the commenters claims that the rock guy is Oliver Vanderliven, and that he was he was only 31. Never mind, he's just bald. 6'6", 240 pounds, dramatically run over Hall, where Vanderlinden had already knocked over a motorcycle, tried to tear up a car door, and threw rocks at cars. And the guy has not been charged.
The golf cart guy.
Yeah.
See, let me ask you, because you brought up the subway thing.
Yeah.
If they attempt, like, what would you rather have? Those kind of bigger guys that are trying to get him to stop fucking tackle his ass until the police come? Or he gets fucking hit by someone in a golf cart?
I mean, obviously, restrained, but it is the method of restraint that bothers me. Like, there were 3 men who were clearly willing to, do it, and you could have had, one guy on each leg and one guy on arms, or one guy on each arm and one guy on legs, and you can hold a man down like that, without choking him. And again, choking someone is an inherently hostile act that can only be viewed by the chokee as someone attempting to murder you because they are taking away that precious air that you need to live. So, I mean,
but the guy walked away.
So he
wasn't choking him out.
He did walk away.
Well, no, he was choking.
No, he was absolutely trying to choke him out. Maybe he was going a little easier, than he might have otherwise if he was actually trying to, murder someone. But I'm not him. I can't say that. No one else around is an expert, so probably not anyone can say it except for himself. I mean,
except that it seemed the consensus of the people on the train car was that the action was necessary. That's the vibe I got. I didn't look super deep into it, but the vibe I got was that there was a tacit consent of everybody that was in that space based on the conditions that led to that direct encounter. That does not make it right.
No, but basically the people who were in direct threat by him are saying that something had to be done. And then that's what happened. And so, I mean...
Precisely. Whereas this, he's committing property damage.
Right.
If you need to call the cops or the country club security or whatever, the guy clearly the only weapons he had were fucking rocks that he could barely throw.
Yeah.
And you had 2, potentially 3 grown men that would be able to intervene.
Yeah, and we're trying to intervene verbally, prior to someone whose first instinct was, I'm going to run this guy over. That'll stop this.
Yeah. No, that's attempted murder. He knew when he hit that guy, he was trying to hurt him.
Yeah. Now, point 2 is, cool, I have this new setup over here, but I definitely need a different setup for shorts, where the shorts are as tall as they possibly can be. And like, maybe we're on either side and, We get like a
Yeah, that
badge
would
or
be
something
fair.
with thunderous applause.
I like that.
Yeah.
So now we're moving on. We
We
only
are.
got about 20 minutes left. We're
We
moving
do.
on to the RFK clips.
How's it going in that room, man? You boiling?
So first of all, before you start the clip, what
Yeah.
is your actually comeback 94?
Yeah.
What is your first impression? You had said something because I was like, these interviews probably, I mean, they didn't have a lot of views, and it's like it's some New Hampshire local public access TV or whatever. So even though they're on YouTube, like it's not going to get as many views as something like, you know, RFK Jr. on Fox News, like he was earlier today or yesterday.
Right.
But at any rate, what is your general impression? Because you had said some things, and I was just curious about what
the only thing I had heard about
your initial impression is.
Yeah, the only thing I had heard about him prior to everyone starting to talk about him was that he had some good ideas when it came to like running the country internally.
Yes.
I didn't hear much about like if he had any foreign policy knowledge or anything like that, but that he had ideas that I would probably agree with for how the country should be run internally. And I was just like, okay, cool. I'll probably hear about him later then. And this is me hearing about him later.
Okay.
And
so
boy, I did not know his voice is gravelly.
Yeah, he actually has a rare disease.
I was wondering about that. Okay.
Yeah, he developed it in his 40s. So yeah, he's had it for a long time. It's apparently, not unheard of, but it affects like the muscles, I think, around the voice box, or something having to do with the speaking system. And so it just makes it. And he also said in a podcast I heard, he says it's worse. He's like, apologize for my voice. It's worse first thing in the morning. It's like they were recording early in the morning. He's like, it's worse first thing in the morning, but like it'll warm up and then it's not so bad later in the day.
Interesting.
So, which is interesting. I hadn't heard of it. It has a name, dysphonia something. I don't remember. It's not important. Anyway, earlier in this interview, link is in the description. WMUR Channel 9, and their YouTube channel, and you can watch the whole interview. And actually, I wanted to discuss what he said to a woman about why he thought he would be a good president. And that's all he really described was he's like, I know how corrupt the executive bureaucracy is because I've been litigating against it for 30 years or 40 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, and we need to fix this because, and he gives like 5 or 6 different examples. He was talking about fucking, like the USDA or the EPA, I think, deregulating like toxins coming off of farms, and like Smithfield working with USDA, and basically how Smithfield took over like most of the fucking pork market in the US using various government agencies to like pave their way and make it impossible for small farmers to compete, which is like, a passion of mine, agricultural policy, right?
Right.
But framing it in that kind of regulatory capture problem, which is awesome because like, that is the purview of the president. That's his job, is to run the bureaucracy, right? And so like him having such an articulate way of like, all of these things are fucked up across every single agency. He didn't bring up the FCC, but he could easily, talk about how, either throttling internet or all sorts of like non-competitive or monopolistic kind of price schemes and all sorts of other things. I'm sure you could find fault in every bureaucratic agency. And then on foreign policy, he gave a speech at a university. I think he's been in New Hampshire for the week or whatever. And I'm not following him that closely because I'm not going to vote for him, right? Because I am not a registered Democrat, and I can't register as a Democrat because I value my fucking mental health and my physical health, because I probably would be retching violently while vomiting if I register.
Why don't you just register long enough to vote in the primary and then switch back? You could do that.
They do.
Totally fine.
They do. I won't.
Okay.
part of that's because I have not yet relinquished certain responsibilities to the Green Party, and so I can't. You're not supposed to. In fact, it was a big deal when the state Green Party's treasurer registered as a Democrat to vote for fucking Bernie, and we're like, you're not eligible to be you're not in our fucking party anymore. Like,
get out of here.
So that was
not in our club.
It was a retroactive resignation because they're like, what the fuck? You're not even a registered Green. You have to leave your position with no warning at all.
Was he just blabbing about it, or do they have access to like voter records, and so they can like?
You can look at voter records.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I think it was an internal hit piece.
It was registered like
by some of the
see how other people were registered. That's weird. Like
I think it was ultimately probably dug up by someone who wanted to create internal turmoil. I'm pretty sure there's professional agents provocateur within third parties.
I was just talking about that in the context of the Star Wars RPG the other day. I was like, it's great that there's a specialist called the agent provocateur. Like, how fun would that be? It's like, so that Empire sucks ass, am I right?
Yeah, I've been reading a lot about agents provocateur, I'm kind of framing beginning to craft a narrative that goes against the kind of like misleading tropes or whatever within the prepper community that like we discussed before about looting and violence after disasters and stuff.
Right.
Or after power outages, specifically grid down. Yeah. And then I was looking because they also mentioned civil unrest a lot. They're like, oh, one of the reasons that you should bug out is if there's civil unrest in your area. And I was like, what civil unrest would require you to bug out if you're not in like a central business district?
Yeah.
Like if there were fucking riots in my neighborhood, I would probably go to like my sister's, I guess, or somewhere else. Like I imagine that would be bugging out. Someone in the comments had suggested, yeah, I would definitely always keep enough room on a credit card to and have a couple hotels in mind that are 10, 15 miles outside of town.
I mean, if the riot gets to your place, things are serious.
Well, and again, I've been collecting some research to, I think, adequately provide enough evidence to debunk that notion that civil unrest is somehow common. And one of those is cops being agents provocateur, meaning like, yeah, people can protest and it's going to get out of hand because the cops want it to, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, it outgrows the police. And I was like, no, the police want it to be bad.
Yeah. They huck a brick and they're like, someone threw a brick.
Exactly. Run over him with a golf cart, quick.
Get a whole bunch of cops and
or with horses. They do horses too.
They do horses, yes.
At any rate, yeah. So anyway, this clip is not on those things. This is specifically on vaccines. And you said to me something to the effect of, oh, I wish he's an anti-vaxxer or something.
Yeah.
And so you believe he's an anti-vaxxer?
I hadn't heard anything about it since then. I've heard a little bit more, but this is a good intro to it. So yeah.
And it's just interesting. You can see the media suppressing him like they did Bernie by smearing and finding all sorts of ways to like discredit. If you scroll like mainstream media and even some independent but mainstream adjacent media and YouTube or in print online, and it's in the title because they know people don't read past the title. Right. Like fringe candidate, anti-vaxxer, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like,
right. Yeah.
So
oh no. And that was definitely what it was. It's like you're saying, I didn't look much into him either. And yeah, on Reddit, which is one of the main places that I go for, just browsing. Yeah, some of them were, very pointed. And if you click through, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's not exactly what it is.
And I was a lot closer to the Jill 2016 campaign because I had been following Jill Stein since her first campaign in 2012.
Yeah.
And actually went to one of her rallies in Dover. It was cool. She was really nice to come down there and talk to like fucking 20 of us hanging out at the park and take fucking pictures and shit with us. Anyway, I'd been following her for a while. And so in 2016, when it moved on and Bernie bent the fucking knee to the Democrats, and Jill Stein got a lot of traction from disaffected Bernie people, they smeared her as anti-vax. And she said essentially the same thing RFK Jr. is going to say now, which is why I knew when they started being like, oh, he's anti-vax, blah, blah, blah. They're trying to take someone who is questioning the way we go about approving things through the federal bureaucracy and being like, let's paint them as a fringe person so people don't even consider them. So anyway, let's hear him in his own words.
Absolutely.
One of the obstacles also that's keeping you essentially from that base of the Democratic Party is your history of anti-vaccine activism. Medical community, the medical establishment considers you a dangerous purveyor of vaccine misinformation and a threat to public health, is saying. The Los Angeles Times has that as a headline. So ultimately, the people of New Hampshire will make up their mind about this.
Say again?
The LA Times had a headline that said he was a threat to public health.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to take measure of you as a candidate and a person, your views, your policy positions. My question is this. If you're the president, how does vaccine policy change? And we know this is more of a state-by-state issue, but how at the federal level will you bring your views to bear at the federal government?
Well, it is a federal issue because the federal government recommends and approves new vaccines. And my only argument, I've never been anti-vaccine. I'm called anti-vaccine because that's a way of kind of marginalizing and discrediting me in the view of the public. But I had all my children vaccinated. I was fully vaccinated. And I've never been anti-vaccine. But what I've said is I'm pro-science and pro-safety, and we ought to subject vaccines, which are mandated for healthy children, not for sick people. We ought to subject them to at least the kind of rigorous placebo-controlled trials that are mandated for every other medicine. It's the only medicine that's exempt from pre-licensing safety trials, and none of the vaccines that are currently on the 70, I got 3 shots a kid. My kids got 72 shots, which are now, essentially mandated for American children. And none of them have been subjected to pre-licensing safety trials. And what I would do is say, let's do the trials. Let's find out what the risk profile is, what the benefit profile is, and then allow parents to make up their minds about, whether they want to use vaccines for their children. Each of those vaccines, that ought to be a free choice.
All right, Mr. Kennedy, enough questions here. Let's get to that town hall audience out in Studio B.
Yeah, so you might disagree with him questioning, like, I don't know. Do you take?
Oh, I think the licensing thing is completely valid. I do think that it is weird to have a certain class of drugs that are exempt from normal, double-blind and placebo testing and things like that. That is an unusual thing. I've heard about that ever since they came out with the coronavirus vaccine. Even before then, hell, people don't trust like flu vaccines. So I mean,
I don't generally get one.
Yeah, I haven't for the last couple of years, but I mean, I did pretty regularly for a long time.
Yeah. Here's my take on the flu vaccine, and it was the same with the coronavirus vaccine. If you have, especially with COVID, if you have identified comorbidities, or if you are in the endangered age category. So if you're like over 60, I would be recommending that you take it.
Right.
If you were, it had some kind of heart condition,
obesity,
yeah, and things like that, I would recommend it be taken.
Yeah.
And was against mandate. Same with the flu vaccine. If you're fucking 70 years old and you go play bridge with your 70-year-old girlfriends or whatever, like, you should probably get a flu vaccine. It wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
But as a general, the flu isn't mandated. It is in the military, but everything's fucking mandated in the military.
Everything. I probably got half of the 72 in the military. 72 seems so high.
No, they do. They give you almost every single vaccine that you would still need as an adult.
Yeah.
They give to you whether you've had it or not.
In boot camp, They don't want to fuck around.
It is easier to just give everybody every single vaccine.
Yeah.
Than it is to try and track down everybody's vax card, because we don't have a national registry.
And I think we do now.
Do we? Okay.
I think we do now. I could be wrong about that, but I know a lot of shit went digital, like right prior to the pandemic. And so like, you don't even have the stamped cards anymore.
Yeah. The county keeps one, but it's possible to go to a pediatrician and get doses and them never show up on your record.
Okay.
Because of just the more points of contact, the more likely the data is going to be.
I get extra vaccines just for fun, man. You know, like I cut my finger doing the fence with you, and got my
Tetanus.
Yeah, tetanus, and then I went in. I think it's been less than 10 years, and I'm pretty sure that thing is good for 10 years. And I went in and got it again, the other month.
For me, is anytime I have an injury where I suspect that it is a potentiality, I just get a tetanus shot.
Yeah, might as well.
Because, just because, like, but the tetanus shot has been around for a goddamn ton of time, and it's an adult body, right? And you're not giving it to me once a week, right?
He had some points that I thought were kind of like, well, duh. He said that, a lot of these are mandated for healthy people, not sick people. Yeah, that's how vaccines work. You don't wait until you're sick and then give someone a vaccine. You take a healthy person or a person who can mount an immune response to the disabled virus, and you give it to them when they're healthy. That way, when they're subjected to it later on, their body reacts. You don't give it to sick people. It would just make it worse.
Yeah.
And then he said that, we should do all the facts and everything and let people make up their mind. Well, once you've done your trials and everything, like, let's say we fix the system, we go through, we make it so there's trials. People not getting it by choice is antagonistic to public health. And I am a person who is of the opinion that public health trumps your personal health, your personal beliefs, your personal anything. Do you want to exist in society? Get the shot or go live with the Amish.
But he provides a good example of the explosion of how many are necessary.
Right.
And he's like, why is it on the 1-month-old infant vaccine when they're scheduled to do it at a month for hepatitis B? When, like, the only ways of contracting that are something that an infant is almost certainly not going to come into contact with.
Incorrect. Simply passing through the through the vagina exposes the baby to hepatitis B if the mother has hepatitis B.
Okay, in that case, then the mother gets tested for Hep B, and if the mother has Hep B, but they say that about vitamin K too, right? Or whatever.
Ketamine?
No, I'm sorry. I think it might be. I think it's. I don't know. It's like this thing where they say, "Oh, we need to put this."
Well, vitamin A. Vitamin A is
on
for
the baby's
blindness.
eyes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it is. Whatever.
Yeah, it's to prevent children from going blind from various reasons.
Yeah, and they say that, like, oh no, it's absolutely necessary. I mean, vitamin A is probably not that. The delivery system for that has probably been in use for so long that if there was a problem with it, we would have known.
And also blindness is pretty huge.
But also at the same time, like, it's so infrequent in number to say, let us use this as our system of public health rather than other things, which he does mention and focus on. It's not just, I believe in bodily autonomy, end of story.
Yes.
No, let's look at how agricultural toxins, and how there's a direct correlation between the increase in agricultural toxins and the prevalence of certain, immune disorders.
That's a very good argument, because like, we are generally in awe as a society of how much like washing hands with soap and water and vaccines have done to minimize mortality. But at the same time, we've done a whole bunch of other shit that increased it. We used to have leaded gasoline. We have, glyphosate or whatever the heck it is.
Asbestos.
Yeah, we have all this other stuff. So it's like, cool, we gained all this ground. Imagine how much more ground we could have gained if we weren't, polluting the environment with all this stuff that's going to fucking kill us.
100%. And the vast majority of preventable diseases are caused by environmental toxins.
And you know what's worse about
not
asbestos?
By naturally occurring diseases or organisms. Yeah,
asbestos is so much worse than a lot of these other things. Asbestos and silicosis, which is what miners get a lot of times, is when you get exposed to basically And what's so terrible about that is that it causes a disease, but you can't get rid of the cause of the disease because it's just minerals in your lungs, and there's no way to flush that out. And so you're just stuck with that. And no matter how much treatment you get, it will eventually kill you. Whereas, like, if you're in a place that is, degraded and the environment is bad, you can, in theory, leave, and it will reverse a lot of the symptoms. But yeah,
Right. I mean, in some senses, you could leave. Like my
I
mother.
know, that's
birth,
why I said,
yeah. My mom was born with birth defects from DDT.
Yeah.
And because they live in an area where everybody's fucking spraying it, and like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess you could get up and leave, but like
your that was why I worded
family
it that
is
way.
engaged in the activity that's hurting you.
That was why I worded it that way. Yeah, is in theory, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's all manner of kinds of things. I just think that's kind of what the anti-vax charge is essentially used to hope people dismiss him, when in reality he's
right.
Like, I actually believe in science, and the problem is that the pharmaceutical companies put their fucking people on the inside of the regulatory agencies,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore we're not actually like, they're policing themselves.
Yeah, and their profits before science, to be sure. If they can buy someone off and tell them that this is necessary for every man, woman, and child they stand to make billions, they're going to go ahead and make those billions, especially if they don't have to do all the testing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's a pretty reasoned response. It's the same thing Jill Stein said.
Yeah,
and she was also engaged in environmental litigation for children in Massachusetts.
Yeah,
she was
voted for her one time.
Doctor at Harvard and an environmental activist. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I said I voted for her once. That was fun.
Yeah, and actually, interestingly enough, that could be speculation for another day because I want to wrap, but I do think there's a possibility that the Green Party National, they're taking this much more Cornel West running much more seriously than really anything before. Because like the whole fallout with Bernie and then Jill Stein gaining like quite a few percentages and eventually getting 48 state ballots.
Mm-hmm.
That was unprecedented for the Greens, I think, at that time. Oh, maybe Nader in 2000 or in 96 might have had more than that. But at any rate, it was the first success they'd had in a while. And they're taking this much more seriously. I'm already seeing, because I'm still connected to some of the communications channels.
Right.
I'm already seeing that they're taking it much more serious. And a lot of people who have been doing green things either a decade or more ago, or kind of tangentially, or being community organizers and stuff, but are still connected in there politically, and within their social network, they're all kind of gravitating towards the Cornel West as an opportunity to grow the party and possibly provide a breakout onto into American political relevance. And I just think that it's possible that they do a similar thing when the DNC decides at the convention that the media tries to manipulate people's behavior, and there's limited vote fixing in certain counties and other things like that it'll come and be a contested convention. And then Barack Obama, because they put the convention in Chicago, I don't know why, maybe because of Barack Obama, they can go to take the convention there. It'll be a contested convention. Obama will come play peacemaker, and everybody will elect Gavin Newsom to be the presidential candidate, and block RFK out. And in that case, I hope that the Greens are in a position to say, just like we did in 2016, we are going to invite you here. Yeah. You run with Cornel West. He can be the figurehead, and then the person who speaks the language of reconciliation, and you could be the person in charge of fucking sweeping the fucking corruption out of the executive. It could work.
I'll take it.
I doubt he'll do it. He'll say the same as Bernie, but maybe not. Depends on how bad they fuck him over.
Maybe his knees are super bad. He can't bend the knee.
I saw a video, of course, like he's using the media very well. We could talk a long time because I've been trying to catch up a little bit and just kind of watching it as like not entirely emotionally invested. Obviously, I'm not going to change parties to vote for him. Right. But like also seeing like how successful he is moving through various spaces. and how he's just like on tons, like he was on fucking Jim Brewer's podcast. I watched that, which is not big. It's not that big. It's not terribly small, but it's not that big, right? And he was on Mike Tyson's podcast,
which is pretty big.
It's not huge though.
He was on Joe Rogan, I believe.
He was on Joe Rogan before he was a candidate, but yes, he's been on Rogan. Yeah. But he comes on all sorts of other smaller media outlets too. He went on Glenn Greenwald's show, which is like fucking tiny, right? Like maybe a few 100,000 subscribers at most.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's relatively tiny, right?
Yeah.
At any rate, he's playing a game he calls retail politics. He's like, that's how it used to be done. That's how it should be done. You shouldn't be able to run a campaign by having friends in the corporate media and sitting in your fucking basement, Joe Biden. You need to go out and talk to people. You need to debate. You need to do these things if you want to be fucking president. And it's true. And it's interesting. But let us move on. So we're still kind of on the subject of not vaccines so much, but on COVID specifically, which is, of course, where most of the vaccine stuff comes from.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
I mean, the answer to that is I would do the pandemic preparedness protocols from WHO, CDC, the European Medical Association, the NHS, National Health Service in England, have said for decades, which is you quarantine, you don't do mass lockdowns ever. You quarantine the sick, you isolate the vulnerable, and then you look for, particularly for off-the-shelf therapeutic drugs that treat the illness. You don't lock everybody in and say you're waiting for a vaccine that is untested and that nobody knows whether it's going to work or not. You actually treat people who are sick. This is the first respiratory illness in the history of medicine where you could go into the hospital with a positive PCR test and symptomatic. And the hospital will say, there is nothing we're going to do for you. You go home till your lips turn blue, until you can't breathe, and then come back here and we're going to give you two things that'll kill you: intubation and remdesivir. Meanwhile, we're depriving people of drugs that are proven, of Zithromax, of ivermectin, of hydroxychloroquine, that were proven. The countries that use those drugs had a fraction of the deaths we did. Why is it, if what we were doing worked, why did we have the highest body count of any country in the world? We have 4.2% of the global population. How in the world did we get 16% of the COVID deaths?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
So 4.2% of the world population, but 16% of COVID deaths.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah. We also didn't do lockdown for an incredibly long time. And then when we did it, it was insufficient. And we considered some pretty crazy things to be essential workers. And then just kind of left people out to dry when it came to money, too. The overall response was pretty shit.
Right. And there's another interview clip I wanted to include, but I thought we already had too much material for this.
Yeah.
But he goes through and talks about the Bill of Rights, right? And he's specifically talking about how the COVID lockdowns just threw out the Bill of Rights, like took away our ability to assemble, took away due process, right? Basically took people's livelihoods from them.
Right. It's also not the first time it's been done.
No, you're absolutely correct. But still, it's an interesting way to frame that and to put it in like, hey, things like due process are really important. And certainly under emergency circumstances, but at the same time, like, we didn't know enough. A lot of decisions were made. And the fact that the coronavirus pandemic wound up being the greatest transfer of wealth upwards, which beat out the previous one that happened, just a decade earlier. Right.
Housing crash.
Yeah. Just kind of goes to show it's just cool. You close this down and you consolidate and businesses buy out and banks get bailed out, and then they're snatching up houses. They're snatching up businesses.
There's still a place down the street called Front Yard Burger that never opened, but still has all the signs up and everything. It's just this burger place that I'll never get a taste of burger from. It's so bad.
Because right before they opened, COVID happened.
Yeah. They had paid for all the signage and everything. They'd renovated the building. I think they still own it and they could in theory open, but where's the money?
Right, and the payment protection plan monies, the vast majority of
That
those,
was so shitty. That got used to like buy real estate and shit.
and it got used to to bail out things that are absurd, like cruise industries.
Yeah, yeah.
They
One,
shouldn't be making profits. You shouldn't be giving them. They're not entitled to the profits they make. The most important thing is that the people that had jobs continue to receive some kind of severance for the fact that they're not able to work.
Yeah,
that's it. To park the fucking boat. Who gives a shit about the company?
right.
Whatever.
Yeah. One worrying thing is that he was talking about how other countries are using blah 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 blah, and ivermectin was listed in there, and I've still never seen anything stating that it helps at all.
No. And you're right. And I looked at a couple other things. He'll say some things, and I'll add comment there.
Okay.
But I do think what he's saying of being like, we should instead of locking closing the country down until we can eventually get a vaccine, which the true intent behind that, he believes, and I also believe, was because if it wasn't this, like, if they had found therapeutics to deal with it, they couldn't rush it through. And if they couldn't rush it through, they couldn't make whatever $5, $6, $7 billion.
And that makes sense. Yeah, follow the money.
Yeah, they were creating the conditions so that they could, check the boxes and push it through without technically being illegal.
Well,
right?
And you'd
But they're
have
creating those conditions.
You'd have people demanding it go through.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some people did.
Well, anybody who wanted to get back to work or who wanted to,
but right, but that's the problem. If we had at the very beginning said, okay, let's start working on a vaccine, but it's going to take us a few years, like 3, 4, 5, 6 years to do the trials and all this other stuff, right? In the meantime, let's figure out how to help people recover from an infection. Therapeutics, rather than focusing on treating the disease rather than preventing the disease. Because we just said, oh, everybody stay inside until we know how to prevent it, which it never prevented it. And I knew the vaccine was never going to prevent it.
Well, it didn't prevent it because it was a different state to state, and the response was just in one state very, like, New York is a great example. It was draconian. And then 2 or 3 states away, much less so. And then you have someone from 2 or 3 states come away into New York, and you just fuck the whole thing. It needed to be
people who were vaccinated were still getting an infection.
Right. But I'm not currently talking about the vaccine. I'm talking about you can still, prevent it mostly without a vaccine, and that's by just doing the stay in place stuff and then dipping into the billionaires, money, and getting it to say, hey, you shouldn't have to leave your house because here's a bunch of money. And we just never did that. We said, stay in your house. Good luck with money.
You're 100% right. That would have been a better
That's the response that I wanted, and I knew I would never get, but I knew from like reading about previous pandemics and outbreaks that was what would work. I think one of the better quotes was, if we could just freeze everyone in place right now for 2 weeks, this would be over at the end of the 2 weeks.
Yep, 100%.
But we can't, because
we can't.
People have their freedoms, and you have people that are just like, I don't believe in it. And you have people that are like, I have to work. And you have just the laundry list of reasons why people were like, I can't just stay at home with my family because I actually don't like them.
I honestly don't think this stay at home stuff.
It was a tough thing because someone has to package your food. Someone has to bring your food to you. And that is a potential exposure at every step, I never did it, but I heard about people who like washed their food down, anything was in packaging, like, wiped it down with wipes. I never did that, but like, if you're threatened by it, go ahead. Yeah.
For the first handful of weeks until we understood more.
Yeah.
And then when we realized, oh, this isn't actually okay. Now there's enough data saying we've looked and really none of it would be on a hard surface or like a plastic film or anything after X number of hours. So,
well, and I'm a freaking weirdo because I would always listen to the radio in the morning, and they had a guy who studied pandemics basically, who would come on the radio every Monday. And every Monday I'd be sitting there listening on the drive, the drive into work. I'm just like, I'm weird.
yeah. I have more to say, but let's finish playing
Yeah.
this because it's a kind of a long clip, right?
It is. It's
Meanwhile,
like 5 minutes.
nations that
How many minutes?
that avoided vaccines and gave their populations.
What was that?
How many minutes?
It's going to be another 4 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and other early treatments. Many of them didn't even have a pandemic. Nigeria has the highest malaria burden in the world. So almost all the population is on hydroxychloroquine. They take it once a week. It's called Sunday. Everybody takes it on Sunday. And it also has the highest river blindness burden in the world. So a large part of the population is on ivermectin. The death rate in Nigeria was 14 people per million population. The death rate in our country was 3,000 per million population, 200 times what they had in Nigeria. Nigeria had a 1.3% vaccination rate. So it wasn't vaccines that had anything to do with ending the pandemic. If you look across the board, the countries that were the most heavily vaccinated had the highest death rates from COVID consistently. Those that had lower vaccines and depended instead on therapeutic drugs did much better. In fact, there's states in India, there's a state called Kerala that adopted our protocols and had death rates similar to ours. The nearby state of Uttar Pradesh, which has 230 million people, so its population is comparable to the United States. As soon as they started giving people ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, the pandemic ended there. What we should have done is instead of using the internet to suppress debate, to censor people, to punish doctors who are speaking out and saying, we should be using early treatments. I'm giving it to my patients and they're recovering miraculously. Those people, these doctors of conscience, were silenced. We should do the opposite. We should have built a grid, and this is what I'll do, that reaches all 15 million frontline physicians in the world, and where they report what they're doing and what's working and what's not working, and all that information then gets synthesized through AI. So we can quickly spit out to all the other practicing physicians, this is what they're doing in Bangladesh and they've eliminated it, or this is what they're doing in China or Guatemala or Central America. But we didn't do any of that. Instead, we used the pandemic as a pretext for clamping down these, controls on our freedoms and to promote medication that didn't work. I mean, one of the things that people should know, the government, the people who were promoting the vaccine had to get rid of all the competitive products. And why is that? Because there's a federal law, the Code of Federal Regulations, that says that you cannot give an emergency use authorization to any vaccine if there is an existing medicine that has shown to be effective against the target disease. So that's why they had to tell us that ivermectin was a horse medication that didn't work. It's not a horse medication. It is given to horses because it works for all mammals. But it's one of the only products in the world that has won the Nobel Prize because it was effective for humans. It's been given in billions and billions of doses, and it's eliminated river blindness and other parasites around the world. We should have focused on things that work rather than focusing on advancing the mercantile interests of the pharmaceutical industry.
And that's it right there.
Advancing the mercantile interests of the pharmaceutical industry is such a solid cluster of words.
Yeah, it's a punch right to their nutsack. Oh, it's a punch right to the nutsack.
And it just summarizes the problem that he expresses through many more words than probably is necessary. He's not the most condensed, articulate speaker.
It's fine,
but he's a good storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And if his
that's
voice
what what sticks with people, stats and blah blah blah. That sticks with people, or that doesn't stick with people. Stories stick with people.
Yeah, no, and he's a great storyteller. And he on the foreign policy stuff, he talks a lot about that because our our particular geopolitical moment is very similar to when his uncle was in office. And like politics is their life. I don't know if you know much about him. I learned a lot about him on I mentioned the Mike Tyson podcast, because Mike Tyson didn't want to talk about policy or politics. He just wanted to talk about family. And I thought that was really kind of an interesting approach. They had a very kind of touching connection, him and Mike Tyson, over pigeons of all things.
Oh, Tyson loves pigeons.
What?
Tyson loves pigeons.
Dude, he loves his pigeons. And apparently RFK Jr. Loves pigeons too. And he's kept a bunch of animals, including emus. He had a lion and a couple other things. He tells that story on Jim Brewer's podcast. Check that out. It's an interesting story. Basically, they used him for something, and then they were going to be euthanized. And there's like some late night TV host back in the day who called him up. It was like, hey, they're going to euthanize these. Do you want a lion cub or whatever? And then it wound up getting euthanized because he was taking it for a walk and it killed a deer.
Yeah.
And then the local authorities are like, well, if it'll kill a fucking deer, like it'll probably kill a human. You can't have the lion anymore.
Yeah.
At any rate, yeah, no. So one of the things I wanted to say, he had mentioned remdesivir in the previous clip before we had stopped, about it being, intubation and remdesivir being like killers. And I did look that up in the World Health Organization. The one, remember, the media said we need to trust the CDC and the WHO or whatever.
Yeah.
And he, right at the beginning, said I would just do the common protocols that like every major medical institution in the world says is the right way to approach this, right? They're pandemic protocols or whatever. Anyway, he says the WHO wrote that indeed they recommended not using it for countries. And it was interesting that I looked pretty into it because I'm trying to find where he's fucking wrong. And I don't agree with him on 100% everything, but I do my due diligence, I think, to try and understand at least in some points, right? Enough points to where, okay, I've fact checked on a number of these things. I feel confident that he's correct on everything else he said as well, right? I'm not fact checking every fucking piece of dialogue. Right. But on the remdesivir, I didn't know this because I really don't give a shit, man. I had my opinion and my understanding of how it worked, and I knew how I was gonna react to that information myself and for my family. But anyway, apparently they had donated a bunch of doses for a trial, and they had done some other trials, but of course they were speeding it through, and they found out that an independent medical auditor or whatever, did a study that found that it had zero use for treating COVID, and informed the pharmaceutical company Gilead, I think is it.
That's one of them,
its name. What's that?
That's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And they informed Gilead that their study result was that it would have no effect on COVID. 2 weeks later, they knew this because they got notice. 2 weeks later, they signed a deal with the UK to sell a bunch of it to the UK for treating COVID. So they knew the studies were saying it wasn't effective when they signed billion-dollar agreements to distribute it.
Yeah.
And so that's just, and I don't understand well enough. I saw it causes kidney failure, but I don't know when he said it kills. I'm not sure what side effect or aspect of it he was referring to, but I did verify that the WHO said, do not use this after people started using it. And they're like, wait a second, don't use that. He also mentioned we're done with that clip, right?
Yeah.
Or is there a little more?
No, we're done.
Okay,
That
great. So we're just about out of here. We can be done in an hour and a half. Perfect. Yep. He brought up Uttar Pradesh. And so I wanted to look into that because I hadn't heard that. And it's kind of a mixed bag. Interestingly enough, they had people go door to door. I mean, this is a province within the state of India, one of the largest provinces in India. and it's got like couple 100 million people or something like that.
I think he said it was 300 million, so comparable to the U.S.
I think it was like 230, and he said so comparable to the U.S.
Yeah.
Because the U.S. is what 320 or something.
We're over. I think we're over 330, rapidly approaching 350.
That's probably true. At any rate, I did look it up, and Uttar Pradesh did many things different. It wasn't just because they were prescribing ivermectin.
Yeah.
But what they did was take things like ivermectin, which had been distributed so widely for so many, like for various different things in so many different places, that they knew that it was safe. That if you took it and you didn't have fucking, what causes river blindness? Isn't it a fucking fly?
It's a parasite, yeah.
It's a parasite that's vectored by a fly, right?
That I don't know.
Okay. I thought that's what the seat fly is, the TSCT or whatever. There's some fly that spreads a disease. I don't know if it's river blindness.
Let's see. What is river blindness? It's caused by a parasitic worm that is transmitted through a black fly bite.
Fly. Yeah.
A fly transmits a parasitic worm into your eyeball.
Yep. Okay. Kind of like malaria is a protozoa. It's another parasite.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's spread by a fly because a mosquito is technically in the diptera.
Shut up. Really?
Yeah. Mosquitoes are flies.
Oh, fuck.
Or they're in the same broad insect category as flies.
Yeah.
They're mosquitoes, but they are more closely related to house flies than
anything else.
A butterfly. At any rate, and so like you have like these things that we know aren't going to hurt people, seriously hurt people, that we could try as therapeutics, because if you look at the numbers there, all of those people are taking those things. They're not necessarily being prescribed them to treat COVID, but they are on these medications and they're not getting COVID, or they're not dying from COVID rather.
Yeah. And that was an interesting, when he was talking about Nigeria, I just looked it up real quick, and they have 6 times the population density of the US, not 6 times the population, but the population density, which should have given them worse results because
it spreads faster, especially the early on when the alpha, delta, and all that shit was way worse than the later strains, and way more likely to hurt you, hospitalize, and or kill you earlier on. But I did look up Uttar Pradesh, and I didn't find anything where they said we prescribed ivermectin. What they did was go house to house, and they used, instead of this like, we're not going to do anything until we have a vaccine, and then we'll let people go back to work or whatever, right? No, they did what they called test, trace, treat. So that's test people. If they're positive, you find out everybody they've been in contact with and test them too, right? And start it over, test, trace. Which contact tracing was like, I was like, at the very beginning, I was like, the best thing we could do is contact tracing.
And we didn't do
system of testing and contact tracing would have, like you said, a hard lockdown for 2 fucking weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Would have done similarly, is like slow the fucking spread of it so fast that like it's no longer a problem, right?
That was another one of my massive disappointments.
No contact tracing?
Yeah.
He didn't give a shit, bro. I never got asked, have you been,
by the time I tested positive, they never asked, like, who have you been around?
Yeah.
My answer would have been, I've been all around work. I've been to the store, because like I'm allowed to do that. I wore a mask. Great. But like, I went there, like.
Yeah, and so in Uttar Pradesh, one of the larger provinces in India, they did the test, trace, treat, and their treatment was they gave medicine boxes. So they had a variety of fairly safe, like, okay, if they got a fever, give them the Tylenol. If they got this, then give them this, right? Yeah. Kind of thing. And they were able to. They did have a lot, but my point was, to contradict what he said, this wasn't their own. First of all, they were contact tracing, which is huge, and testing people and going door to door and testing people, even if they didn't have symptoms. We're just testing the whole block. Can
you imagine that trying to happen here, though?
I think I think that most people would have been on board for that if we didn't have to pay for tests. Because when I think I got exposed to COVID, I have to go spend $15 on a fucking COVID test.
Really? You had to pay for it?
Yeah, you go to the CVS. They're like, here's the receipt,
Oh,
and
you're
on
not
there,
talking
there's
about
the
like
email
going to the
address, and
hospital.
the government will reimburse you, but
No,
you
no.
pay us first.
Oh no,
I'm
I had insurance, so I just went to the hospital and got tested there. I see.
Okay, you just went to a test center?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was on fucking government healthcare. They didn't, and they closed all the testing centers as soon as Joe Biden took over, because of course, Trump said something to the effect of, "Oh, if you want lower cases, just close the testing centers." And people are like, "Oh, you monster!" And then as soon as Biden got fucking elected, that's the first thing he did. All the testing centers in Chico were closed by March after Biden took office. March 2020.
Protected.
Yep. And then they stopped offering them at the drugstores. You used to be able to drive up. There used to be dedicated testing centers, but then you could do a drive up test at the pharmacy.
Right.
Yeah. At any rate, in Uttar Pradesh, they also did a lockdown, but it was a soft lockdown. So what that was a curfew. It's like, you're not going out to the clubs, you're not partying, you're not doing this, but you can still live your day-to-day life. We're just limiting the amount of time y'all can be around each other.
Yeah.
Which is not the same as the way we did lockdowns here.
Yep.
And so they actually had an approach where they tried to suppress it, but it wasn't just, oh, they gave them this. It wasn't as linear as he kind of presents it as. And I wanted to say that because I think it's also important to have that context, because in that example, in just me looking, I was like, oh, there's a half a dozen other things that worked that were probably contributed to it working. And that doesn't say his suggestion is bullshit. All it is like, oh no, they really did. It seems like a lot of things much better than we did.
Yeah. Well, in some of the speech that he had worries me that like he's saying that a correlation is causation, and I'm just like, and you said it in certainly more and better words. That he's saying like, oh well, they had this, so this, and it's like no, they had that and this and the other thing, and so this, but there's no direct line for sure.
They were contact tracing; they could stay a step ahead of the disease, hypothetically, and we didn't do that. We didn't give a shit. In fact, what we did is instead our state lied, because they're in the back of their mind is like, we have to keep this going long enough till we have a vaccine that can make our friends billions of dollars and us millions of dollars, because we are all invested in their companies, right? And instead, so they turned it into a fucking culture war and made it to where if you said like, hey, but what about all these places where people take hydrochloroquine every day for malaria, or every week for malaria, why are they still have COVID? They're testing positive for COVID, but people aren't dying of it. But then again, at the same time, maybe some of it's genetics, right? They live in Africa, like
anything that's regional,
are different enough to where maybe whatever mild thing, or maybe they implicated like a lack of vitamin D, or noticed a lack of vitamin D as being something that was more prevalent among people who had serious COVID complications than people who didn't. So they're like, well, maybe fucking people in sub-Saharan Africa,
we will be figuring this out.
We'll
be figuring this out for decades. Is the thing, is like new results will be coming out for decades. And it'll be useful, because coronaviruses are not one-offs. There are many different ones.
And so that's good. And I think that's why I really liked what his reasoning was like, why did we not just establish a global means of communicating data so we could figure out faster which therapeutics work?
Yeah,
right?
I can see that.
And then he mentioned basically creating a giant system that all of that massive amounts of data is managed by AI. And I was like, oh no, he's into AI.
Yeah, he's into AI.
But it was just but thinking of like someone who's like approaching it from a very practical standpoint, like, this is our problem.
Yeah.
This is, I think, a really good way to solve it is to actually have more communication instead of what we did in the US, which is I got ostracized from most of my friends for my positions, even though I was correct on almost all of them. Like I knew it was like right when they were like because I had been following it since like the first cases. I was following it at least from early January. So what's that, a couple months before we locked down?
Yeah.
I think we locked down in March, right?
18th. March 18th.
And so I had been following it. I actually think I spoke to the city council and made a joke. I could probably go back and find a video of me making a joke about it in January. Because I was like, I'm not going to stick around the whole meeting this time because I might have a case of the coronavirus because I wasn't feeling well.
Maybe I should.
Maybe I did. Because it was circulating. There was a study that showed it antibodies present in a huge part of the population. It was circulating in California in January.
Yeah.
But we didn't have our first case until like the end of February. And it's like, no, it's been circulating for 2 fucking months. You're just saying, oh, unknown cause of death or cause of death flu.
Yeah.
I lost my life.
Them. Yeah. Oh, no.
At any rate, I thought that his kind of here's what I'd do. Instead of suppressing information, I would facilitate the sharing of information because that's how we make decisions. And so the kind of idea, again, I think the phrase you used was anti-science.
Right.
Is just a caricature they've built because he's trying to fucking sever the ties between business and government. He's like an anti-fascist. He's trying to eliminate the merger of corporate power into the political institutions.
Ooh, careful. You just said he's an anti-fascist. That means he's with Antifa.
He's
a terrorist.
No, I'm just in the sense, if you want to, I mean, I don't narrowly define fascism as just like corporations merging with the state.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, how Mussolini defined it. Because Italian fascism was fucking horrific, but it didn't have the same fucking racial element that fucking Nazism did. Not at first.
I was gonna say it did, but yeah.
It did, but not at first. That was they took that from Nazism later.
They ran out of enemies. They kind of ran out of enemies, and
the enemies were socialists and communists.
Yeah.
And probably atheists and other people because they were fucking hardcore Catholic or whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
Interesting thing.
Please.
Or just about his speech it is something called spasmodic dysphonia, and it is. What's interesting is it is not anything wrong with his throat. His throat's completely fine. It is a neurological disorder where it sends random spasm signals to his throat.
Right.
And so his voice box just spasms.
So it wasn't incorrect that it's like his muscles are just kind of like
I
think is how I described it.
Yeah, and then it's interesting that he's like, oh, it's bad in the morning, and I'm like, oh, I wonder, is his brain just firing up in the morning? And he's like, all right, firing on all cylinders.
I think that with practice, you can kind of like control it, but first thing in the morning, it's harder to control.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, clearly not this caricature, and clearly like it just makes it so much more transparent how like the mainstream media and all the big papers and shit phrase their headlines and phrase their questions and all this stuff in a way to try to discredit him because they want Joe Biden to stay on top. And I think they're gonna fucking keep him from it. And it's remarkable because, and we'll continue maybe talking about it again, I'm not super emotionally invested, but like, I mean, in a lot of ways, I think I liked Bernie's rhetoric, but really a kind of I liked Bernie's core too. But this guy comes really close with like his ability to tie it into things that I care about, like the fact that our fucking institutions are corrupt, and he can talk about the FDA and the USDA and the corruption, and our fucking food system is toxic. Why? Because corporations need to make money making toxins, and like all of this shit really kind of speaking to things that I value. And also, unlike Bernie Sanders, Bernie was like, well, we're going to have a big program that does this, and we're going to have a big program that does this. And he's just like, the system's fucking corrupt. I want to end the corruption.
Yeah.
And he was referred to it as that he actually was talking shit about Trump in one clip I saw, and he's like about the whole drain the swamp thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's got a foreign policy speech that I'll send to you and check it out. And if you want to, hopefully maybe there's more foreign policy news we can talk about. Yeah, we might do another clip on him in a few weeks or something.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe he'll be assassinated by bullets from 3 different guns like his dad was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. At any rate, this has been With Thunderous Applause, and this was a great episode because we talked about government corruption, and government corruption is what happens when your economic system is compelled to grow at all costs, and with Thunderous
to
Applause,
infinity and beyond.
Yeah, to infinity and beyond. And we believe that when liberty dies, it dies
with thunderous applause.
Thank you, my friends.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for your patience, everybody. Peace out.
Later.